Welcome to Connect at 51. This is an online Bible study designed to stimulate discussion in groups. So every time you see a question screen like this, hit the pause on the video and discuss your thoughts with your group. So to get things started, your first question to discuss is this: how do you deal with pressure? Maybe you exercise or play video games. For some, meditation, just sleeping a lot, or having a drink to unwind is how you deal with stress. Unfortunately, none of these solutions were available for Jesus when he was under severe pressure. So let's look at Luke 22, verses 39 to 44. Jesus went out as usual to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples followed him. On reaching the place, he said to them, "Pray that you will not fall into temptation." He withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done." An angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him, and being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. After reading this account, the second question to discuss in your groups is this: where is this happening, and are there any other events that happened at this location? The Mount of Olives forms a 2-mile ridge running north to south on the east side of Jerusalem. As the name implies, olive trees grow here, and as it is mountainous, it provides a great view of Jerusalem. The first time we see it mentioned is when David flees Jerusalem when his son stages a coup. David and his household flee, and as they trudge over the Mount of Olives in escape, David is barefoot with his head covered, and he's weeping as he reaches the top. In the Gospels, it says that Jesus went out there as usual to the Mount of Olives, so this was a regular place for him to teach and pray, as it had a view directly towards the temple. Another well-known incident, the triumphal entry, where Jesus rides into Jerusalem on a donkey to the celebration of crowds, also begins on the Mount of Olives. It is also the location, in just mere moments after the passage that we are reading, that Judas betrays him and Jesus is arrested. It's worth mentioning all of this not only to paint a picture of where we are, but to demonstrate that a single place can have a broad spectrum of experiences associated with it. In this case, it is a place of triumph, but also sorrow. It's a place of great teaching, but also deep betrayal. So it seems like a fitting place to have a deep wrestle with the will of God. So as we read Jesus' prayer, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me," what is Jesus praying about? What cup is he talking about? Some translations use the phrase "cup of suffering." Drinking a cup was also a figure of speech meaning to undergo or to experience. It's also possible to draw references to the Last Supper or Passover meal that just occurred moments ago. There's a cup that is drunk in the Passover 4 times symbolically throughout the meal. But many prophets, including Jeremiah and Isaiah, use the cup as imagery to represent God's wrath, anger, and judgment. It is clear that Jesus knows that there is death, suffering, and separation in the near future, and he is in anguish, so much so that he is sweating blood. This is a medical phenomenon that occurs under great duress, where the blood capillaries literally burst and fill sweat glands with blood. The pressure is most certainly on. So what do you think is causing the most anguish for Jesus? There are many things that could cause such deep anguish at this moment. He is about to be betrayed by one of his own disciples. He will be mocked, beaten, flogged, and subjected to one of the most cruel forms of execution ever devised. Yet there is one thing even worse. That is separation from God. Jesus is shown to have the most intimate relationship with the Father, yet on the cross he exclaims, my God, why have you forsaken me?" When Jesus died for us, he endured the wrath and judgment of God and descended into hell. There he was cut off from God, and this is the most terrifying prospect for anyone, even Jesus. So the next question is this: how does Jesus deal with all of this extreme pressure? While Jesus shows that the coming suffering is almost unbearable, he ends his prayer with the words, "Not my will, but yours be done." This perhaps is the most powerful phrase that we can bring into our own prayer lives. We can be honest with how we feel. We can be upset and devastated with what our lives look like and what lies ahead. We can be conflicted and we can be overwhelmed. But if we can honestly commit to the prayer, "Not my will, but yours be done," then that is the ultimate solution to dealing with the most extreme pressure. Now, some of you may have referenced that this entire prayer is not happening on the top of the Mount of Olives, but on the base of the mount in a garden called Gethsemane. Now, the name Gethsemane means oil press. Does this location give you any further insight into what Jesus is experiencing? Gethsemane, meaning oil press, is the place where olive oil was made. First, olives were crushed by a large stone into a paste. Then the paste was strung into discs, and those discs were squeezed, forcing out all the juice, which is both water and oil, from the body of the fruit. In time, the oil would rise to the top of the water, where it is collected and placed into clay jars. This golden liquid is a precious oil used for food, cleaning, healing, perfumes, anointing, representing the Spirit, as well as being a fuel for light. The symbolism is extraordinary, for in the coming days Jesus' body was to be crushed. On the cross, water flowed out of him, and there his spirit left his body. But in time, just as the oil rises to the top, he rose in resurrection and now is the ultimate source of nourishment, healing, and enlightenment. We are told also that Gethsemane is a garden. So the seventh question is this: what do you think is the significance of this prayer happening in a garden? It is no accident that this powerful moment is happening in a garden. The story of humanity begins in the Garden of Eden. There, Adam and Eve follow their own will, leading to tragedy. Now, in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus is determined to do God's will rather than his own, and the path to restoring the Garden of Eden begins. It is apt that when Mary first sees Jesus after the resurrection, she thinks he's the gardener. This all points to Revelations 22, where the picture of paradise is also a garden with the tree of life in the New Jerusalem. So the final question to discuss and pray through is this: how does knowing the good future that God has for you help you follow his will rather than your own?